The story of a curious little girl who stumbles into a bear's cottage has been cherished by generations of children. But what if the roots of this beloved tale reveal a much darker truth? Behind its cosy, familiar facade lies a history filled with violent twists, hidden meanings, and eerie connections to long-forgotten folklore. In this video, we'll uncover the true origins of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. You'll discover how the earliest versions featured an intruder who wasn't a child, and who met a far more gruesome fate. We'll explore whether the bears were once something far more monstrous than just woodland creatures, and delve into its surprising ties to ancient myths and legends. This isn't just a simple fairy tale. It's a chilling journey through centuries of storytelling, evolving morality, and the shadowy legacy of a tale that's far more unsettling than you ever imagined. Welcome back, Darklings. Let's begin with revisiting the version most familiar to us today. Once upon a time, there was a curious little girl named Goldilocks who lived near the edge of a forest. One day, while wandering through the woods, she came upon a quaint little cottage. Being an inquisitive child, she decided to peek inside. The cottage belonged to three bears: Papa Bear, Mama Bear, and Baby Bear. They had gone out for a walk while their porridge cooled. Goldilocks, unaware of the cottage's owners, stepped inside. On the table, she saw 3 bowls of porridge. Feeling hungry, she decided to taste them. She tried the first bowl. "This porridge is too hot," she exclaimed. She then tried the second bowl. "This porridge is too cold." Finally, she tasted the porridge in the third bowl. "Ah, this porridge is just right," she said happily, and ate it all up. Next, Goldilocks spotted 3 chairs. Feeling tired, she decided to sit down. She tried the first chair. "This chair is too big," she said. She then sat in the second chair. "This chair is too big too." Finally, she sat in the third chair. "Ah, this chair is just right," she sighed in relief. But as she settled in, the chair broke into pieces beneath her. Feeling sleepy after her meal, Goldilocks climbed the stairs and found 3 beds. She lay down on the first bed. "This bed is too hard," she said. She then tried the second bed. "This bed is too soft." Finally, she lay down on the third bed. "Ah, this bed is just right," she said, and drifted off to sleep. While Goldilocks was sleeping, the 3 bears returned home. They immediately noticed that someone had been in their house. "Someone's been eating my porridge," growled Papa Bear. "Someone's been eating my porridge too," said Mama Bear. "Someone's been eating my porridge, and they ate it all up," cried Baby Bear. Next, they looked at their chairs. "Someone's been sitting in my chair," growled Papa Bear. "Someone's been sitting in my chair too," said Mama Bear. "Someone's been sitting in my chair and they've broken it to pieces," cried Baby Bear. Finally, the bears went upstairs to check their beds. "Someone's been sleeping in my bed," growled Papa Bear. "Someone's been sleeping in my bed too," said Mama Bear. "Someone's been sleeping in my bed and she's still here," cried Baby Bear. Goldilocks woke up to find 3 angry bears standing over her. Terrified, she jumped out of bed and ran as fast as her legs could carry her, out of the cottage and deep into the forest. She never returned to the bears' house again. This is the sanitized, modern version of the story, light-hearted and loved by children. But the earlier versions were far darker, with endings that are far more gruesome. The tale was first published anonymously in 1837 by poet Robert Southey. However, the bears were not the family unit we know today, and the intruder was not an innocent little girl. In Southey's version, the intruder is an old woman, described as a cunning vagrant or beggar. She peeks through the windows of the bears' cottage to ensure they are gone before breaking in, a deliberate act of trespassing. Southey paints her as dishonest and unlikable, in stark contrast to the mischievous yet endearing Goldilocks of later retellings. The 3 bears themselves are not portrayed as a family. Instead, they are described by size: a great huge bear, a middle-sized bear, and a little small bear. Much of the story unfolds as we know it today. The old woman invades the bears' cottage, eating their porridge, sitting in their chairs and testing their beds. However, when the bears return and find her asleep, they roar in anger. The old woman wakes in terror and jumps out the window in a panic. The bears rush to the window, but she has vanished without a trace. They never see her again. Southey's tale was not a light-hearted children's story. It was a cautionary narrative with clear moral undertones about trespassing and consequences. As the story was retold over the years, Robert Southey was often credited as its original author. But that all changed when a remarkable discovery came to light. A handmade book, created in 1831, 6 years before Southey's version, was found. Crafted by a woman named Eleanor Muir as a birthday gift for her 4-year-old nephew, the book was beautifully illustrated and shared key elements with Southey's tale, such as an old woman as the intruder. However, it also introduced several unique and striking differences, hinting at an earlier and darker version of the story. In Muir's telling, the old woman samples bowls of milk instead of porridge. When she lies on Small Bear's bed, she doesn't fall asleep, but accidentally breaks it. When she notices the bears returning home, she panics and hides in a cupboard, hoping to avoid discovery. But her plan fails. When the bears find her, the story takes a dark and gruesome turn. They try to kill her by burning her, then drowning her, but neither attempt works. Finally, in a brutal act of retribution, they hurl her onto the steeple of St. Paul's Cathedral where she is impaled. A rather shocking ending for a book created as a birthday gift for a child. But this chilling tale offers valuable insight into the story's roots. Eleanor Muir's version proves that the three bears must have existed as an oral folktale long before Southey put it into print. While her version was never widely published, it reflects the darker tone of the tale's roots in folklore, where justice is often swift and merciless. The tale of the three bears is built around the classic literary rule of 3: 3 chairs, 3 bowls of porridge, and 3 beds. Each time the first is too much in one way, the second too much in the opposite way, but the third is just right. This theme of balance reflects historical ideas about harmony. Aristotle's golden mean, for instance, teaches that the best path lies between extremes. Courage, for example, exists as a balance between cowardice and recklessness. Similarly, Buddhism's middle way advocates avoiding both excess and deprivation to achieve peace and enlightenment. These ancient principles suggest that the three bears resonates with timeless ideas about finding balance in life. But could this theme of balance and harmony also tie the story to ancient myths? Surprisingly, the three bears may echo a legendary encounter between a cunning hero and a fearsome giant. One notable parallel to the story of Goldilocks and the three bears can be found in the tale of Odysseus and Polyphemus from the Odyssey. In Homer's epic, Odysseus and his men, on their journey home from the Trojan War, land on an island and enter a cave stocked with provisions. They begin to help themselves, assuming the cave's owner will follow the custom of hospitality and welcome them. But when the giant Polyphemus returns home with his flock of sheep, he is furious and blocks the entrance with a huge stone. He devours 2 of Odysseus's men that very night. The following morning, Polyphemus slays and eats 2 more of the men before leaving the cave to graze his sheep. By the time he returns, Odysseus has hatched a cunning plan. After offering Polyphemus wine to make him drunk, the giant asks Odysseus for his name. Cleverly, Odysseus tricks him by replying, "Nobody." Polyphemus, now drunken and unwary, falls into a deep sleep. Odysseus seizes the opportunity, driving a hardened wooden stake into Polyphemus's eye. When the blinded Cyclops cries out for help, his fellow Cyclopes ask who has harmed him. Polyphemus replies, "Nobody," leading the others to assume he is afflicted by divine punishment and leave him to his fate. The next morning, Polyphemus lets his flock out to graze, feeling their backs to ensure the men are not escaping. But Odysseus and his crew cleverly evade capture by tying themselves to the undersides of the sheep, slipping past the giant undetected and ultimately escaping to their ship. This story shares striking similarities with early versions of the Three Bears. Both feature an intruder who enters a space without permission, takes resources, and provokes the wrath of the rightful owner. The detail of the giant being blinded with a sharpened stake even echoes the gruesome fate of the old woman in Muir's version, where she is impaled on a steeple. These parallels suggest that the Three Bears may draw from far older narratives, deeply rooted in ancient storytelling traditions. The old woman in Muir's version, who cannot be burned or drowned, and ultimately must be impaled to be killed, also bears a striking resemblance to the real-life figure of Polycarp, an early Christian martyr who died around 155 CE. According to legend, Polycarp was sentenced to be burned at the stake, but the flames miraculously failed to harm him. Instead, he was ultimately killed by being impaled with a spear. This parallel adds a fascinating layer of historical resonance to Muir's dark version of the tale. In 1850, Joseph Cundall published a new version of the story that introduced a little girl as the main character. Cundall believed the shift would make the story more engaging, reasoning that many other tales already featured old women. By transforming the intruder into a sweet, innocent child, he created a stark contrast to the fearsome bears, heightening the tension and sense of danger. However, the girl wasn't yet known as Goldilocks. Cundall named her Silverhair, a possible nod to the story's origins with an older woman. Over the following decades, silver began to give way to gold. Eventually, her name evolved into Goldilocks, the name that has endured ever since. But could the origins of this curious girl be tied to another beloved fairy tale? Surprisingly, the story of the three bears shares striking similarities with Snow White and might change how you see both tales forever. In the Grimm's 1812 first edition of Snow White, the heroine, a 7-year-old child, discovers the home of the 7 dwarfs while wandering through the forest. Inside, she finds a table set with 7 plates and cups, as well as 7 small beds. She samples a little food from each plate and takes a sip of wine from each cup. Growing tired, she tries each bed one by one, finally settling into the last bed to fall asleep. When the dwarfs return, they notice the disruption and ask familiar questions. Who has been sitting in my chair? Who has been eating from my plate? And who has been lying in my bed? Eventually, they find Snow White asleep. Unlike the bears in the Three Bears, however, the dwarfs are so charmed by her beauty that they welcome her to stay, and there is an even stronger connection to a Norse folk tale found in old legends from Valdres, a collection of traditional stories from Norway. Compiled and published in 1871, the book includes a story that is essentially the tale of Snow White, but with notable differences. Instead of encountering 7 dwarfs, the heroine stumbles upon the home of 3 bears. These are no ordinary bears, however. They are cursed knights who shed their bearskins every evening to reveal their true forms as 3 handsome men. While the bears are out, the young maiden helps herself to the food cooking on the stove. When they return, she hides under their triple bunk bed. Eventually, the maiden falls in love with the youngest knight. Much like in the Grimm's original version of Snow White, the villain in this tale is not a stepmother, but her own real mother, who is jealous of her beauty and makes multiple attempts on her life. In the end, the knights defeat the mother by burning her in tar and sulphur, breaking the curse that bound them in bearskins and ensuring a happily ever after for all. This tale is claimed to be a traditional Norse folk tale, but since it was recorded over 30 years after the 3 Bears first appeared in print, its connection to the story remains uncertain. Interestingly, in the same year Southey's The 3 Bears was published, the Grimm brothers recorded a tale called Snow White and Rose Red. This story, which had been published earlier by others, features a large black bear befriended by the 2 sisters during a snowy winter. The bear is later revealed to be a prince under a spell cast by an evil dwarf, and the sisters eventually break the curse, transforming the bear back into a handsome man. However, many folklorists question whether this folk story has any connection to the famous Snow White tale. Most believe the two are unrelated and simply share a heroine with the same name. The motif of animal bridegrooms is a recurring theme in folk tales, but the depiction of 3 knights wearing bearskins in the Norse tale is particularly intriguing, given the profound cultural significance of bears in Norse mythology and tradition. In Norse folklore, bears represented immense strength, ferocity, and transformation. Tales of men transforming into bears likely drew inspiration from the legendary berserkers, elite Norse warriors said to embody the raw power and untamed fury of bears during battle. Active during the Viking Age, the term berserker likely originates from the Norse words for bear and shirt, referring to either the warriors' bear pelts or their ferocious bear-like state. This tradition of men symbolically or spiritually becoming bears may have inspired similar motifs in folklore, adding a mythological depth to the story of the three cursed knights. But what if Goldilocks herself wasn't originally human? Some evidence suggests she might have started out life as something entirely different. An alternative origin for the three bears may be found in the tale of Scrapefoot. This version was first published in Joseph Jacobs' 1894 English fairytales collection, nearly 50 years after Southey's story. However, Jacobs claimed that it was collected from a Mrs. H, who had heard it from her mother over 40 years earlier, indicating that Scrapefoot may predate Southey's version. In this tale, the three bears live in a castle rather than a cottage, and the intruder is not a little girl, but a male fox named Scrapefoot. If the original intruder in the tale was a fox, it's possible that the roots of the three bears lie in the medieval fables of Reynard the Fox. Reynard is the central figure in a cycle of tales that originated in 12th century France and spread throughout Europe. The fox's opportunistic behaviour in these fables aligns closely with the character of Scrapefoot, suggesting a possible connection between the two stories. These stories depict him as a clever and often morally dubious character, using wit and strategy to outsmart his enemies, typically other anthropomorphic animals like wolves, bears, and lions. Interestingly, the stories of Reynard the Fox were part of the inspiration behind Disney's animated film Robin Hood. In one tale, Reynard the Fox cunningly deceives Bruin the bear into trespassing into a human's home with the promise of honey. Bruin, enticed by the prospect of a sweet reward, breaks into the house and gets his head stuck in a honey jar. The commotion draws the humans, who capture and severely beat Bruin, while Reynard, true to form, escapes unharmed. In another tale, Reynard sneaks into a barn, feasts on the livestock's food, and makes himself comfortable in a cosy bed of hay. When the farmer discovers the intruder, he tries to capture Reynard, but the clever fox evades him at every turn. In frustration, the farmer sets the barn on fire to smoke Reynard out, but the wily fox manages to escape yet again, leaving chaos in his wake. Reynard epitomizes the archetypal trickster, a figure woven into myths and stories across cultures. Tricksters defy boundaries and break rules, often using cunning or thievery. They can be clever, foolish, or a blend of both, mocking authority and disrupting normalcy. Across traditions, the trickster is a resourceful character, using wit and schemes to steal food and treasures, or simply to cause mischief for amusement. At its core, the Three Bears aligns with this tradition, with Goldilocks embodying the trickster archetype. She crosses boundaries by intruding into the bears' home, stealing their food, and causing chaos. But what if the bears themselves weren't always bears? Their origins might reveal something unexpected and far more sinister. In 1865, Charles Dickens completed his final novel, Our Mutual Friend, which features a chapter titled The Feast of the Three Hobgoblins. In this chapter, the characters partake in a simple meal of bread and milk, and Dickens writes, "It was, as Bella gaily said, like the supper provided for the three nursery hobgoblins at their house in the forest, without their thunderous low growlings of the alarming discovery, 'Somebody's been drinking my milk.'" This reference suggests that perhaps at the time, a version of the story existed featuring not bears, but three hobgoblins, small, mischievous spirits often linked to household fairy or brownie folklore. It's also worth noting that while the word bugbear today refers to a source of anxiety or irritation, its origins are far more sinister. Historically, bugbear described a type of hobgoblin believed to devour misbehaving children and scare them into obedience. The word bug in Middle English meant a frightening thing, though it may also trace back to Old Welsh or Scots, where it referred to an evil spirit or goblin. In medieval England, the bugbear was often depicted as a menacing, bear-like monster lurking in the woods, preying on disobedient children. This evolution raises an intriguing possibility. Could the original version of the Three Bears have featured hobgoblins or bugbears and transformed over time into three anthropomorphic bears? If the earliest version of the Three Bears did indeed feature bugbears or hobgoblins, it wouldn't be the first time a folk tale was softened to make it more palatable. Many stories that once warned of supernatural creatures and lurking dangers were gradually reshaped, particularly in the Victorian era, into moral lessons for children. Whatever its true origins, one thing is certain: behind its charming, familiar facade lies a story far darker and far richer than we ever imagined. But what surprised you most about the story's origins? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if your hunger for fairy tale origins still persists, be sure to subscribe and explore the rest of my channel. See you in a future video.